The Biden administration is having its first high-level talks with the Chinese regime on climate. China is responsible for about 30% of global emissions, the highest of any country. NTD's Becky Joel has the latest.
U.S. climate envoy John Kerry is set to visit China this week. There, he'll meet with Chinese officials for talks on climate issues, despite the tense U.S.-China relationship. Kerry arrived in Shanghai on Wednesday, while meetings will start Thursday and Friday. He's expected to look for common ground on climate issues with his Chinese counterpart. Comparison data on carbon dioxide emission sheds light on what may be addressed at the meeting. It says emissions from the two countries mainly come from burning coal, natural gas, oil, and other fossil fuels. The information comes from U.S.-based science advocacy organization, Union of Concerned Scientists. The organization says China was responsible for almost 30% of global emissions in 2018. That's the highest of any country. On the other hand, the U.S. accounts for about 15% of global emissions, half of China's level. The U.S. recently rejoined the Paris Climate Accord under President Biden. President Trump had withdrawn from the agreement in 2017. He said the agreement was a total disaster for the U.S. economy and was lenient toward Beijing.
China benefits the most from the Paris Climate Accord because they don't have to do anything until after 2030. So it gives them a competitive advantage against the United States.
Next week, the U.S. is set to announce its own new target for emissions cuts by 2030. Becky Joe, NTD News.
In 2020, the U.S. saw the largest one-year increase in murders. After looking at FBI data, some experts say the past year is the most violent since 1998. NTD's Alison Lee has the details.
According to the FBI's quarterly Uniform Crime Report, the murder rate in cities of all sizes rose by at least 20% from January to December 2020. The nation reported over 20,000 homicides, making it the largest one-year increase in history. The FBI report is based on data from close to 13,000, or 70% of the country's law enforcement agencies. Cities with over 1 million people reported the largest rise in murders, a whopping 32%. In New York City, that figure is roughly 41%, and in Chicago, that figure is over 50%. Cities with 500,000 to 1 million people saw a nearly 27% increase. Even cities with less than 10,000 people saw an average increase of close to 25%. When it comes to arson, the data is even more striking. Cities with over 1 million people saw a 57% increase in arson last year. Overall, the nation saw a 24% increase. Rape and robbery, on the other hand, dropped noticeably in the country, both by over 10%. The increase in overall violent crime in 2020 is at 3.3%. This despite the figures having declined in previous years. Statistician and crime analyst Jeff Asher tells the Washington Examiner this set of data puts the murder rate of 2020 at roughly 6.22 per 100,000, making it the highest since 1998. Figures from 2019 and 2018 were both lower. Manhattan Institute's Charles Lehman says he believes the rise in crimes relates to anti-police sentiments and movements. He tells the Washington Examiner these spikes in murder are unsurprisingly associated with hostility towards the police and a retreat of police from public life. Alison Lee, NTD News.
Now, New York City may not seem like the best home for bees, but its high-rise rooftops and tiny gardens are actually buzzing with honeymakers.
Nearly 2.5 million Italian honeybees have arrived in New York City. They waited in a white van to be picked up to their new homes early Friday. The founder of Honey Farm, Andrews Honey, drove up from Georgia to deliver the bees.
There's about 12,000 per box. Bees are sold by weight, you know, like cheese.
Some buyers stuffed the packages into bags, while one strapped 2 boxes of bees to his bicycle. With it, he transported them to his hive on the Lower East Side. Many hives in the city are now found on the rooftops of skyscrapers and office buildings. New York legalized beekeeping in 2010 and has hundreds of registered hives.
Here in the city, just it connects it, much more, to me, and to let people know that there's beekeepers in the city. I've heard but this is the first time that I've actually seen so many other beekeepers.
Bee populations are in sharp decline worldwide. It's partly because excessive pesticides and chemicals in rural areas and a lack of crop variety. But New York doesn't have this problem, making it a healthy habitat for the insects.
You need pollinators. A third of what you put in your mouth needs a pollinator. So it's important for pollinators to be prevalent in the environment. And in this city, believe it or not, bees do well because there's less pesticides generally.
He added that those who live close to farms have to fight the pesticides.
The Tokyo Olympics are finally drawing closer to reality after a one-year delay due to the pandemic. But there are still a few unanswered questions.
The countdown is on for the Tokyo Olympics. The Games are scheduled for July 23rd to August 8th, and the Paralympics from August 24th to September the 5th. The one-year delay has already brought with it plenty of complications, and there are still some unanswered questions regarding things like spectator numbers and the so-called playbooks. Some 11,000 Olympic athletes will compete in 33 sports, while over 4,000 Paralympians will compete across 22 sports. But with Japan's elderly population only just starting to receive inoculations, there will be a need for restrictions still. International spectators will not be allowed. Organisers plan to decide in April on the maximum number of local fans permitted in venues. Japanese sports arenas have been recently operating at up to 50% capacity. Are athletes required to be vaccinated? The simple answer is no. But the International Olympic Committee urges them to be vaccinated once vaccinations are made available to the general population of their countries. Participants must follow the health guidelines in their playbook. What is it? First unveiled in February, the playbooks outline the rules that all Games participants must follow. That includes mandatory mask wearing, keeping 2 meters distance from other athletes, and clapping instead of singing or shouting to show support. Athletes will also be tested at least once every 4 days.
And had no hesitation in saying the Games will take place and they'll be the safest Games possible.
Japan is holding several test events, seen as dress rehearsals, to confirm the Games' operational capabilities at venues and test out health protocols. Early May will see 4 such events with athletes coming from abroad. There will be no shortage of compelling action once the Games kick off. 4 sports will debut at this year's Olympics: karate, sport climbing, surfing and skateboarding. Several stars, from French judoka Teddy Riner to American swimmer Katie Ledecky, will be back in the quest for more gold. Japanese swimmer Rikako Ike, competing after her recovery from leukemia, will no doubt be among the most emotional moments of the Games.
Conservationists in Ukraine are working hard to save the European bison, the continent's largest land mammal. Between 350 and 400 European bison live in Ukraine.
A unique animal is starting to make a comeback in Europe. Once widespread across the continent several centuries ago, the European bison was overhunted and its numbers declined dramatically. With no natural enemy due to its size and strength, humans were responsible for its decline. The species was considered extinct in the wild up to 1923. That's when the International Society for the Protection of Bison was formed. The organization found just over 50 of the animals in zoos around the world and launched efforts to reintroduce the animals back into the wild. Today, between 350 and 400 European bison roam the wilds of Ukraine.
European bison managed to survive in this country only thanks to a few individuals who preserved the animal despite the fact that this is highly unprofitable and problematic.
Due to a lack of infrastructure and organized national parks, Ukraine is one of the few countries on the continent where the animals live in the wild. A special project was launched this March, supported by the World Wildlife Fund and Ukrainian forest workers. Tracking collars were fitted on 2 European bison during an organized operation in late February. The devices help conservationists gain data on the location and well-being of the animals. And that data will help scientists learn more about them and their daily routine.
We see that the numbers are dynamically growing, so we have the grounds to hope that both the mountain and the plain European bison will continue growing in numbers.
Last December, the International Union for Conservation of Nature said the European bison was making gains, more than tripling its population since 2003 to more than 6,200 in 2019.
Matchbox is now creating models based on electric cars. The company is collaborating with Tesla and other car makers. NTD's Patrick Hayden takes a look.
Toy maker Matchbox is launching a new series of toy cars based on real-life electric and hybrid vehicles. The company says it wants to raise awareness to children of the environmental impact of motoring.
We wanted to work with Tesla to inspire kids as the future drivers of tomorrow. We think their parents will love to see how their kids play with cars that encourage environmental consciousness, like electric cars.
Besides Tesla, Matchbox is collaborating with Nissan, Toyota and BMW in creating an electric vehicle set. The company is also releasing a model that's going to be made of 99% recycled materials.
We are unveiling a concept car, just like the real car industry does.
The launch comes as the company is overhauling its European business. Matchbox was created in 1953 as a British company and is now owned by American toy giant Mattel. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
A river in Wales turned white on Wednesday. But don't worry, it's not caused by harmful chemicals. It's leaked milk. A milk tanker crashed into the River Delays in Carmarthenshire, spilling its contents and turning the water white. Eyewitness footage showed the milky white water flowing over a small dam in the river. The BBC reported Natural Resources Wales said that an unknown quantity of milk had spilled from the tanker, causing significant discoloration. Local police said the crashed milk tanker caused a road to close overnight until the tanker was removed. NWR said officers would continue to assess the impact of the spill. That's the news for today, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Stuart Lees.